Hey everybody, and welcome to AvidMax Fly Tying Tuesday. My name is Brady Laehr, and today we're going to tie a Hackle Stacker for you. Going to start out with our hook and our vise. This is the Firehole 315. It's a great hook from Firehole. It's nice for cling cameras, and I also really enjoy it for the Hackle Stacker pattern here, just because you have that nice flat base up top that you can kind of work with, and then the curvature shank helps to let the hook lay below the surface for this type of a pattern. The thread we're using today is a Veevus. This is 16/0 in olive dun. And then the first material we're going to tie in is a little bit of sparkle emerger yarn. So this is the light olive color here. And I went ahead and split what I had in half just because it's a smaller pattern. So I really only needed about half of what came on a hank with this yarn if you're using Antron or whatever else the case may be. So we'll go ahead and secure that right on top of the hook shank here and about the length of the body. And then we can walk it on back, down the curvature a little bit so that this will sit down and in. And then we can bring our thread right on back forward. This is a great emerging dry fly dun pattern. If you have a lot of fish that are taking what seems to be off the surface, but you don't see any sort of emergence or any sort of dry fly action, any adults around, then there's a good chance that these bugs are getting stuck on the surface tension, and the fish are capitalizing on that. So it's a good pattern to help utilize that stage. Next material we're going to tie in is a little bit of turkey Biot, and I'm using just olive today. I went ahead and pre-soaked these to make them nice and supple and easy to work with to tie in. So we'll go ahead and tie this in at the tip here and walk it on down to where our trailing chuck tail material is. And again, just right on down that hook shank, and then we can work on forward, creating a nice smooth underbody to wrap that Biot on, and on forward. And I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room up front here to do the hackle and the thorax stubbing for this pattern. So we'll go ahead and secure our thread in place, and then we can bring that Biot forward. Grab it with my hackle pliers here, and go ahead and wrap that on out. I'm just going to do a smooth body on this one. You could do more of a textured body if you flip that Biot over and tie it with the convex side facing outward. Wrap on forward, trying to maintain that segmentation as we go until we get to that position here where we can capture it off. That bobbin cradle out of the way, and then I can go ahead and capture the Biot with a few wraps, locking that in place before we trim out the excess material here. And then I'm going to make myself just a little bit of a thread base here, nothing too crazy, just smooth everything out a little bit so that we can create our parachute loop and then begin to wrap our hackle. Before we go too far, I am going to pick out my hackle and get that into place. So we'll measure it out just to be a little bit oversized. We'll find a nice feather off our cape, measure that out. It looks to be about the right size, just a little oversized compared to that gape. And this being a Firehole hook, it's already got a nice wide gape on it. And we'll trim out the excess barbels here. So once we have our hackle feather prepped, we can take it and lay it right on top. And we're going to secure this in place so that we can wrap it parallel, just like you would if you were doing a parachute Adams against a parachute post. We're actually going to create that post now. So we'll take our thread and we're going to go up and over our finger 2 times here to give ourselves a nice sturdy post. So now that we have everything in place, we can go ahead and bring our hackle around and start to wrap it a few times. Getting that base laid. Nice and soft. Don't want to break our hackle at this point. And once we have a couple wraps, then we can start working on up our thread post. You can see I'm using my fingers to just kind of keep it taut as I go around, as you transition it between hands. And we'll do a few wraps. We want this to be roughly the same size as our thorax, so that when we lay it down over the top of it, it covers that thorax up nicely for us and sits flat on top, or splays out on top. So once we've done a few wraps to get ourselves on up, we can work on down. And then we can go ahead and capture that off. So I'm just going to sneak over it here and under, and we'll go ahead and grab that against the hook shank there. We can then clip off the excess hackle material, and I'm going to lay this rearward, this post rearward, and put it into my material holder just to keep it out of the way for now. Go ahead and clip that excess off, being careful not to clip anything we don't want to there. And then we can dub our thorax, a nice healthy thorax underneath here. So we're going to use some Antron sparkle dubbing for this. And this is the medium olive color. We'll get a little bit out. Don't need a whole lot, but you do want a nice bulbous thorax on this. Still want to start sparse and work your way up. We'll create a nice dubbing noodle here. This is just going to be something to prop that hackle up on. Once we have that noodle created, we pull everything else out, back out of the way. Work that nice thorax in here. Like so, leaving ourselves just a little bit of room behind the hook eye so that we can bring that hackle on up. So we're going to take it, kind of pull everything rearward, and fold it on down over the top here. Try to get all those barbels on back, and then we can come up and capture that thread loop with a couple of quick wraps here. Secure that in place. And then we can trim out some of that excess material, anything that got snagged along the way here. That one barbel. And we can sneak a whip finish on in. Somewhat of a cumbersome tie, just a different method than you see using traditional hackles or even a parachute style hackle tie-in. This creates a nice low riding mayfly. You can see all that hackle's fixed right up on top. It's going to stay floating above that point, but the rest of this is going to be allowed to sink below the surface. And so it'll look like it's a fly, especially with this trailing shuck, which I'm going to trim down just a little bit, shorten it up, maybe feather it slightly. If you're fishing on top and you see fish rising and they're just not coming up for your fly, you feel like you have the right imitation, try one of these guys just slightly below the surface and you might be happy with the results that you get for it being trapped right under that surface tension. There's your Hackle Stacker.